What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound brought to you by the Hockey News. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I am joined today by Michael Augello and Jack Williams of the Hockey News. We are coming at you on this opening day of the 2025-26 NHL season to talk about all of the latest and greatest storylines from around the league in bite-sized portions. So we've got lots to talk about today. But before we do, want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now you can get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right. As I mentioned, we've got actual games happening tonight, meaningful games that matter in the standings. We've got the season kicking off tonight with the Florida Panthers and the Chicago Blackhawks. Then it's the Mike Sullivan revenge game, New York Rangers at Pittsburgh Penguins. And then finally, for the nightcap, we've got the Colorado Avalanche and the LA Kings. But as we look ahead to this season, kind of taking a sort of a big picture view of the season. Last year, Mike, we saw teams like the Montreal Canadiens, Ottawa Senators, teams like that made big second half pushes to kind of claim both of their wild card spots in the Eastern Conference. And then also in the process, they broke their respective playoff droughts. So kind of took that next step from the rebuild stage into the contending stage. So, Mike, are there any teams that you could potentially see moving on from that rebuild stage this year, similar to what Montreal and Ottawa did last year, and actually make a postseason push?
I'll take one team in the West, one team in the East. The one in the West is easy. Everybody is picking Anaheim, and I agree because you bring in Quenneville, you have all that talent coming to the forefront. They got the Mason McTavish contract done. Now that doesn't mean he's going to have a big year because players that hold out usually struggle in their first year. But there's a ton of talent there, and Quenneville I think can get the most out of it. In the East, I mean I would have to say Columbus. But the big question with Columbus is the goaltending. I don't know whether Jet Greaves and Ivan Fedotov and Elvis Merzlikins are up to the task. If they get, I'd say, average goaltending and the performances they got last year, then I think that they can jump from the not making the playoffs to making the playoffs.
So not going with the hometown team in Buffalo then, Mike, I take it?
No. I understand the want of everybody to end the 14-year playoff drought, but the goaltending right now is a big question mark. The defense, a lot of injuries, and they never replaced JJ Peterka. They're depending on internal development of young players like Jack Quinn and Zach Benson. That's a lot of ifs, and when you have a lot of ifs, some of them don't come true. So that's why.
Very true. Jack, what are your thoughts on looking ahead to this season? What teams are you expecting to kind of take that next step before the season gets going here?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy question just because, we're getting into a place right now where a lot of the playoff teams are really starting to lock in place a little bit more. And we're seeing a lot of the same teams make the playoffs, even if it's from the second and first wildcard positions. But I really like what I've seen from Detroit so far, especially towards the end of the year. That was a team that really kind of fumbled it as they got towards the end of stuff like that. But on paper, they really look like a team that things, should be working for as well. I mean, you have Raymond, DeBrincat, Larkin, Kane, you have guys that are putting up 60-plus points a year as well. You have Sider on the back end. You have a team that just looks generally really good, and on paper it should be working. You would think this would be the year with that core group coming together that they'd be able to really light the fuse and start getting things going a little bit more. I think they have a good core, and if they can get into the playoffs this year, I think you have a good group that you can get consistent success out of as well. I'd also agree that Anaheim has a good chance as well. You have a young group that is finally starting to come to fruition a little bit more as well, and I think that group can make a little bit more of a push as well. But I think the West has a little bit more leeway than the East. Well, I just mentioned Detroit, but I guess you have a little bit of just leeway with those two teams as well. But I think it's going to be difficult getting into the playoffs no matter what, talking about those new teams getting in.
Yeah, I think a lot of Detroit fans really hope you're right about that one. They've been waiting a long time for this Iser plan to come into. I will also throw in, I've got my eye on Utah this year. I think that Utah is gonna be a team that is gonna take the next step this year. You could kinda see it starting last year. Now they've got new ownership and everything kinda starting to come together. They've got a really exciting young forward group, so that's a team I'm gonna be watching. Tough in the Central Division, though. On the flip side of that, Mike, which playoff team from last year do you think is going to be the most likely to miss the playoffs this year, and why?
It may be a cop out to say the teams that were the second wild card in each conference, but in the West, I think it's the St. Louis Blues because they had a ridiculously hot streak at the end of the year just to sneak in by a couple points. And in the East, I think it's the Montreal Canadiens. Their goaltending, I think, is not great. So they're going to need Montembeault and Dobish to stand on their head. And Jacob Fowler is not ready to come into the NHL. They really added a defenseman in Noah Dobson that does the same things that Lane Hudson does. So I think it could limit the effectiveness of Hudson or his ice time. And you can't have both of those guys on the ice at the same time because I think, both of them would be a defensive liability. And they have to have great years out of all those top players, and they really don't have a second line center. So I think they're going to fall back, and I think there are a couple teams in the East that could supersede them and make the playoffs.
Good choices. Jack, what do you think?
Kind of looking at it a little bit more, I think LA is the one that kind of jumps out to me a little bit more. That might be kind of on the borderline there. And it's not so much about what they're doing. It's more so about the teams behind them, the teams in front of them as well in the Pacific Division. Vegas is really, they're a favorite to win the Stanley Cup this year. Edmonton's still in that mix as well. You have Anaheim doing good things too. You have Vancouver coming up a little bit more. And with LA, they're still in a good shape. I really like watching them as well. The harmonicas they did during the playoffs were awesome. You'd love to see more of that. But it's just about what's coming up behind them and stuff like that. And are they getting into a little bit of the lull and kind of in a, area where they're not growing, but they're not declining a little bit more. And also just getting into the playoffs. When they get into the playoffs, I think it's been 3 straight years that they've lost to Edmonton. So I think it's just, they have kind of a big question to answer. What are we going to do to move forward as well? Where I think the teams in front of them and behind them know what they're doing moving forward as well. So I think they have the pressure on them a little bit more than other teams in the league might not.
Yeah, that is very true. I was kind of in agreement with you, Mike, on St. Louis that it's kind of could go either way with them, kind of depending on what kind of year they have. So I mentioned we've got the NHL season that's kicking off tonight, but we had NCAA hockey that kicked off earlier this week. So Gavin McKenna, big time Gavin McKenna, made his debut with Penn State over the weekend in a 2-game road stint against the Arizona State men's hockey team. So 17-year-old Gavin McKenna already made some highlight reel plays. Of course, he finished with a goal and 2 assists on the weekend. And again, it is still so early. We are literally 1 game into his NCAA career. But Mike, knowing what we know about Gavin McKenna, look, there have only been 2 18-year-olds ever who have won the Hobey Baker Award. So that's Jack Eichel did it in 2015, and then Adam Fantilli in 2023. So Gavin McKenna is only 17 right now, but do you think that he could be the next 18-year-old to win the Hobey Baker this year?
Undoubtedly. This guy dominated the WHL, 120 points, scored 2 points per game, over 2 points per game in the WHL playoffs and leading to the Memorial Cup. He's a monster. He's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. Now, obviously the NCAA, there's older players, there's stronger players. He's played 1 weekend and everybody's excited. He's got 3 points. If he maintains this pace, if he plays like this throughout the year, then I don't think there's a I think he'll definitely be a finalist for the Hobey Baker, and then we'll see who he's up against.
Yeah, just really a once in a generation kind of player here that we're talking about. Jack, what do you think about Gavin McKenna this season?
Yeah, I'd agree. This is a kid that just went just went way off last year in the WHL. And I mean, coming into this season here, he's really starting to pick up that pace a little bit more. As well as Mike mentioned, he's running into bigger players, older players and stuff like that, different sense of hockey in the NCAA as well. But it's hard not to say that this kid could be doing the same thing again, just on the pace he is right now. You got to talk about the guys that are there right now, especially some of his teammates on Penn State. That Penn State team is stacked. A Nashville guy, Aiden Fink, is another guy that came back, returned a lot of points from last year as well. You have, I believe, James Hagan is coming back to Boston College as well, and a few other guys from the draft last year that'd be throwing into this mix. A lot of guys that had a lot of points last year as well. So he's going to have some competition, but it's really hard not to say that this kid is a front runner right now. So right now, as you mentioned, the first few games, he definitely looks like the favorite, but that could change very quickly.
Well, McKenna, as Mike said, is likely going to be the number one pick in the NHL draft next year. But I want to talk about the number one pick from the draft this year, Matthew Schaefer, the first overall pick in 2025, of course, by the New York Islanders. He made the Islanders opening night roster after a very impressive preseason. And he's headlining a pretty solid class of rookies that are entering the NHL this season in 2025-26. So looking at, whether it's Schaefer or someone else, Mike, which rookie this season do you think is going to end up being the most important to their respective team in the NHL?
Well, we're seeing a couple players besides Schaefer from the 2025 draft class, getting a look, like Braden Coots in Vancouver and in Jack's neck of the woods and yours as well. Brady Martin is getting a look from the Predators. I think you predicted that, Emma. And I don't know how likely these guys are to stay. I think Schaefer's going to stay the entire year. The rookie that I think is going to have the most impact is a 2024 draft pick, and that's Zane Parekh in Calgary. I think he's going to get the opportunity to play. I think he's going to get plenty of ice time. He's going to get a chance to run the power play. He's a dynamic offensive performer, what he did in junior last year. Defense is a question, but I think he's there. He's going to be the Lane Hudson of this year in terms of an offensive driver. And then in terms of Calgary making the playoffs, they're going to need Dustin Wolf to play like he did last year. But I think he really improves the chances of Calgary being a team that competes for a playoff spot.
Yeah, that's a good one. And Parek's a guy that we've talked about on the show quite a bit as a player who can really make an impact in Calgary. So we'll be interested to see what he can do. Jack, any predictions on which rookies you think are going to be the most important for their teams this season?
Well, hearing Mike's answer, I really like that a lot. So, just a guy out in Calgary and being able to jet out like that as well, especially a lot of those guys that were drafted that are able to get another year of juniors after the fact as well. But, talking about the draft class that just came in as well, Schaefer's in a good place to really have success as well. I really like Micah Misa really getting into the mix in San Jose, and there's a lot to be excited about that organization right now. And I think they're still a few years off, but I think this is a team that could really start getting things going now and developing a core and putting that together. And I got to talk about Brady Martin a little bit. Especially with the Predators in the position they're putting him in right now and centering that first line with Forsberg and O'Reilly, which it's a little crazy, but it's an exciting position for the kid. It will be interesting to see how he takes advantage of that in the moment as well. He's had a pretty decent preseason as well, and I think if he starts getting going, if he starts finding stability, especially with that group, he could have a good big year. The Predators need centers, and he truly has the moment really to step up here.
Yeah, a player like Martin, I think even if he's only getting like the 9-game tryout or whatever it is, I think that this could be very important for him and his development for the Predators next season or the year after. I think that maybe this year, not as much, but I think that that's definitely, he's going to be a very important player for that organization. So good for him to get the reps in now while he can. Of course, we got to talk about the big storyline from the week. Connor McDavid signed a 2-year, $25 million extension with the Edmonton Oilers this week. He, of course, that comes after Kirill Kaprizov signed the largest contract in NHL history, 8 years, $136 million with the Minnesota Wild. So that's now two of the biggest free agents of the 2026 offseason who've now been locked up. Here we were thinking that we would get to talk about this and speculate about this all year, and now here we go, two guys already off the board. But there's still some other big names that are going to be in this free agent class, very different from last year's free agent class. So, Mike, I have a feeling I know who you're going to say, but I will ask, which big name player in the final year of his contract do you think will either not finish the season with their current team or test free agency next summer?
First, let me just say, enjoy Connor McDavid for those 3 years, Edmonton, because after that, you're not going to be enjoying them much anymore. As for the big free agents, I think Jack Eichel is going to get done in Vegas. I would find it hard to believe that Kyle Connor will go anywhere in Winnipeg. And the two other big names, I think, are dependent on where their teams are this year in terms of being competitive. Adrian Kempe in LA and Alex Tuch in Buffalo. And when you come to both of them, I think LA's got a good chance of making the playoffs. And as I attested to before, I'm not optimistic on the Buffalo situation. And it appears that Buffalo does not want to pay him over $10 million. And the Kaprizov deal really threw the pay scale out of whack in this league. And these star forwards, Tuch has scored 36 goals 2 times in a row. He's going to expect to be paid around that amount. And if he doesn't get that in Buffalo, and I think he wants to stay in Buffalo because he's from Syracuse, but if he doesn't get it in Buffalo, he's going to get it somewhere else. So I have a feeling that if they don't get a deal done by the deadline and Buffalo is not competitive for a playoff spot, that Alex Tuch is going to get traded, and Kempe is a possibility as well.
See, I know you so well, Mike. I just knew you were going to say Alex Tuch. Knew you were going to go with the Buffalo guy. Jack, what do you think of the big name free agents coming up? Of course, guys like Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor, Alex Tuch, Adrian Kempe, etc. Which do you see not finishing the season with his current team and testing the free agent market next summer?
Yeah, I mean, I hope I did this contract stuff the right way, looking at it as well. But looking a little bit forward too, I don't know if he's been signed to extension just yet or just what's going on with that. But Artemi Panarin jumped out a little bit more with New York, just because it just talks about how well the team's going to be coming up and stuff like that, especially the last year with how disappointing it was. You have all this talent that's coming in together and stuff like that. It's just not working. If it has another year like that, I feel like that's a player where you could come in and another team could throw a number amount at him and he might take that. And New York could probably match that as well. But I think a part of it goes to he might be getting a little bit older and wanting to chase that cup. Another player who I think is going to be cup chasing a little bit more, and I don't think he's going to be there for very long, is Erik Karlsson in Pittsburgh and wanting a trade. It's just about cup chasing at that age. I think he's looking to finish off his career with a cup and stuff like that. And I don't think that's happening at Pittsburgh anytime soon. So he's one I could see on the move as well. But I mean, a lot of free agents, I mean, lately, like as you mentioned as well, a lot of them have been locked up pretty quickly lately and stuff like that. There isn't too much room for conversation and movement right now. But, it'll be interesting coming up in this cycle for sure.
All right. Well, of course, we've got the entire season ahead of us now. We can make all kinds of predictions and speculate wildly right now. So looking back at last season, we saw players really exceed expectations. Guys like, for example, Zach Werenski. He really solidified himself in Columbus as one of the top defensemen in the NHL. I mean, he was a Norris finalist. He was second in points among defensemen, only behind Cale Makar. So that's pretty good company to be in for an NHL defenseman. Mike, looking at defensemen going into this season, are there any other guys, a Werenski type, that you think could be flying under the radar, who you think could end up having a breakout offensive year the way that Werenski did?
Well, I don't know how much this player is under the radar because he's in the mix for the U.S. Olympic team, and he was, on the Four Nations team for Team USA, but I have a feeling Jake Sanderson's going to explode in Ottawa. I mean, he had 57 points last year. That's a really good year. But he's a dynamic offensive talent. And with the Stutzlas and the Kachuks and the players that Ottawa has, I think he could have a Werenski type of year where he's in the 70s or maybe even a point per game. So, and I think he will make the Olympic team for Team USA. So I'll go with Sanderson.
All right, Jack, anyone jump out at you as a potential offensive breakout candidate for a defenseman this year?
Yeah, I think in talking about the latest news happening with Alex Pietrangelo, I think Noah Hannafin is next to step up in line there, and really, as similar to Mike, a guy that was in the mix for Team USA and stuff like that. I believe he played on the Four Nations team as well. So not too under the radar, but he could be getting a lot more attention and really amplifying this year. I think he could really step into Pietrangelo's place, especially with how high the expectations are with Vegas this year. It's a similar player that likes taking the puck up a little bit more, a little bit bold with his play as well. He kind of fits that Pietrangelo figure a little bit more that I think Vegas wants to fill up and stuff like that. And I think he can easily step into that role, especially having a guy like Shea Theodore right there. I think Vegas's defense can really get going. I think Noah Hannafin could be poised for a big year.
All right. Well, talking about guys like Werenski and guys who we expect to really kind of have breakout years this year or in the last year. I mean, we also saw quite a few players take step backwards last year in the NHL. Jack and I in Nashville know all about that. So we're gonna get to Nashville in a minute here. But Mike, I want to go to you first and ask, all around the league, which player do you think, or players, if you have more than one, is going to be due for a bounce back year in 2025-26?
I'll give you one for each position. In goal, Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins. He had a terrible year. He had a save percentage under 900. I think the Bruins, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but their defense is healthy, and I think Swayman will bounce back. When a player has 61 points and you're considering it a bad year, he's a pretty good defenseman. And Adam Fox had 61 points last year, and everybody considered him having a bad year. I think he's going to be driven to shake off that perspective, and he wants to make the Olympic team. So I think he'll be up in the 70s like he was the previous previous 3 years. And here's low-hanging fruit. Austin Matthews in Toronto. It was injury related. He only scored 33 goals. Mitch Marner is not there. I think he's got something to prove. I think he's going to score 50.
All right. Yeah, I think, talking about Fox and the Rangers, it's probably a lot of candidates on that Rangers team for bounce back years, similar to Nashville, which brings me to Jack. Who do you think will be most due for a bounce back year, whether it's in Nashville or elsewhere in the league?
Nashville, everybody underperformed last year. And I think the biggest one that stands out is Steven Stamkos, especially with that free agency and just the splash that it was felt that he was going to make that last year. Similar to what Mike said about Fox, he had 53 points last year. With most offensive players, that's not bad. With Stamkos, that's not good at all. This is a guy that's putting up 80, 90, 100 points each year. He might be past that point in his career, but you can still probably get 70 points out of him, maybe even 80 and stuff like that. He's still a guy that could be producing a lot more as well. And I think, Nashville expected that a little bit more out of him too. I think at the back end, Roman Yossi's poised for another big year as well, or needing a bounce back year, dealt with some health stuff at the end of the year as well, but he's still in really good shape too. I think they need more out of Brady Shea. Jumping off the Nashville train a little bit more because I just go on and on. Emma knows too. I think Patrick Laine is someone that really needs to bounce back and stuff like that, especially in just the Montreal of it all and needing Montreal to get a bit more of a push and to get a little bit more security and being a playoff team as well. He had 33 points last year. Need him to get back into that Winnipeg shape that he was in as well. But with Nashville's situation as well, if someone gets like a point better than they did last year, that's an improvement. There needs to be significant improvement up and down that roster.
Yeah, I think we said before the show, anyone not named Philip Forsberg could stand to have a better year this year in Nashville. And UC Saros is another one, I think, that caught a lot of the shade for how last year went in Nashville. And I don't think that all of it was deserved. So that's another bounce back candidate for sure. All right, now looking ahead, of course, as the season gets set to begin, we need to do this. We need to get it on record so we can, either gloat about it or, feel shame about it later, but we've got to make our Stanley Cup predictions. So for the 2025-26 season, Mike, your Stanley Cup champion is?
Well, I'll give you the conference finalists and then the champions. Sorry. In the East, it'll be chalk. It'll be the same as last year. And a wounded animal is always an animal is most dangerous when it's wounded, and that means the Florida Panthers will make it out of the East. In the West, I think it'll be Dallas coming out of the Central and Vegas coming out of the Pacific, with Dallas beating Vegas because Vegas has Mitch Marner on their roster, and that means no playoff success. So it's Florida, Dallas, and I'm sorry, I'm picking the Florida Panthers again.
The three-peat. You're going for the three-peat. All right, Jack, what do you think? Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree a little bit. Especially just, there's no reason to pick against Florida. I mean, they're really good right now. I personally think it's going to be the other Florida team. I think Tampa looks really good, especially from what I've seen in the preseason. I know it's the preseason and stuff like that, and I know it's Nashville that I'm watching, but their B team beat up on the Predators' top starters pretty hard in the preseason, and then they went over to Tampa, and you didn't even have their top players in that lineup, and they beat down on Nashville as well. I think, especially talking about those bigger guys coming back as well, those star players coming back, I think this team is loaded up. I think they're in a good place to keep moving, stuff like that. They had disappointment last year. I think that amps it up a little bit more. I think we're going to still continue on this Florida trend of everything right now. So I think Tampa looks good in my place for the East, for the West. I think Vegas is still really good in playoff shape as well. I don't think Mitch Marner is as big of a jinx. He does need to learn how to take some hits and play a little bit more aggressive and adapt that playoff style as well. But I think this is a team as well that's been disappointed over the past few years. That's crazy to say with Vegas, but I think they're going to be able to get to the final as well. As for the team pulling out with it, I think it's going to stay on the Florida trend. I think Tampa's in good shape to do it. It does feel risky to pick against Florida, especially with the way things have been going on right now. But I just like what I've seen from Tampa so far. They just seem like a very sound team.
Let's get you on the record, Emma.
All right. So in the East, yeah, I have to go. I think Florida makes it out of the East again. I mean, you can't pick against that team. It pains me to say it a little bit, but you can't. And then in the West, I think it's going to be Vegas. I think Vegas comes out of the West, and just because three-peat is so unlikely, although with this team, I wouldn't count them out. I'm going to say Vegas Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup this year.
God,
so
you're putting me in the awkward position of rooting for the Florida Panthers. I'm sorry.
No, and it really wasn't just to upset you, Mike. It really is because I think that this would just be so typical luck or karma for Toronto, hockey lore, that of course one of their best players goes somewhere else and immediately wins a Stanley Cup. Not that I'm saying that Mitch Marner is going to be the sole reason Vegas wins a cup. I think that obviously they're just a stacked team from top to bottom. They have so much depth in their forward group and on defense. So I think that it's hard to pick against them this year. I've picked Dallas the last couple years, and so of course now that I've not picked Dallas, that probably means they're going to go all the way.
The most painful thing could be Mitch Marner winning the Conn Smythe Trophy and carrying around a trophy of Maple Leaf Gardens with a big maple leaf on it. That would be the worst.
Yeah, well, maybe Toronto fans have to tune out if that happens. But yeah, Spotlight's going to be on. Mitch Marner. I know he was trying to maybe get away from the microscope going to Vegas, but the microscope's going to follow him wherever he goes. So definitely lots of people will be keeping an eye on him. But we've still got the entire season ahead of us. So for now, we can only speculate wildly. We've got actual games, as I mentioned, happening tonight. And then next time we are back here on Thursday, we will have actual games to discuss and to break down for you here on the Wraparound. So very excited for that. For now, however, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Wraparound. Thank you to everyone for joining us. listening to us talk a little bit of hockey today. We do appreciate it. Of course, want to remind you once more that the Hockey News has been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start. It's a must-have for any hockey fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. Once again, that's going to do it for us today. We've got real hockey tonight, y'all. We can celebrate. For now, for Michael Augello and Jack Williams, I'm Emma Lingan. This is the Wraparound, and we will see you next time.